Welcome to Midnight Rain Tales. The world sleeps, and the rain begins to whisper. In this quiet hour, stories drift through the night air, soft, chilling, unforgettable. Here, under the midnight sky, we share the tales the rain refuses to forget. Stay close and listen. The aqueous impression struck me first. Glistening tracks upon my polished floorboards materializing from nowhere, trailing toward nothing. They hadn't existed when I departed for the city's canyons this morning. I lingered in the entryway, attaché case a dead weight in my hand, gaze locked on the impossible dampness. 15th floor. Windows sealed against the urban drone, the door moments before securely bolted. Time stretched, elastic and silent, holding me captive in the threshold. My fingers clenched the cool brass of the knob behind me, a primal urge to flee warring with the stubborn fact. This was sanctuary, my sanctuary. The footprints themselves were delicate. Perhaps a woman's, emerging abruptly midway across the living space. They traced a path to the galley kitchen, then arced back, vanishing near the hallway that led to slumber and ablution. Silence wasn't merely absence of sound, it was a physical pressure against my eardrums. Only the ragged tempo of my own breath intruded, accelerating without conscious command. The starched collar of my shirt suddenly felt like a noose. I fumbled at my tie with my free hand, the doorknob still my anchor. A survey was necessary, imperative, yet my feet remained leaden things, fused to the floor. A sudden mechanical sigh from the climate control shattered the quiet, jolting me. My keys, slick with an unseen sweat, slipped my grasp, striking the wood with a resonant clang that reverberated through the seemingly vacant rooms. "Is someone—" My voice, a dry rasp. I swallowed, forcing more volume. "Is anyone present?" Only the monotonous hum of the ventilation replied. At last, relinquishing the doorknob's security, I stooped for my keys. Their metallic chill, a shock against my damp palm. The attaché case, suddenly cumbersome, was abandoned by the door. Both hands needed to be free. These weren't mere smudges of moisture. They were detailed reliefs, sharp as if sculpted from water itself, suggesting bare feet fresh from some unseen pool. The distinct curve of toes was visible in the clearer marks, their edges still dark and saturated, defying evaporation. My phone emerged, thumb hovering over the emergency digits, but the words failed me. "Officer, my locked high-rise apartment features unexplained aquatic footprints. Lunacy or intoxication. No, inspection first. Eliminate the mundane, however improbable." My apartment, a compact geometry, living area flowing into the kitchen, a modest dining alcove, the single corridor accessing bedroom and bath. The damp trail led kitchenward first. I navigated around the glistening marks, wary of disturbing this phantom evidence. Evidence of what precisely remained terrifyingly undefined. Each careful step I took elicited a faint groan from the floorboards beneath. The kitchen presented a facade of normalcy, countertops clear, breakfast crockery resting in the drying rack. Then dissonance. The cabinet beneath the sink yawned slightly ajar. A trivial detail, yet I always secured it. The faulty hinge demanded it. Approaching with caution, I pulled it fully open. Pipes gleamed dully, connections bone dry. No leak, but the arrangement within was disturbed. My cleaning agents shifted. The potent bleach, usually relegated to the back, now stood front and center, its label facing outward with an almost curated precision. A prickling sensation traced my nape. Intrusion. Someone had knelt here beneath my sink within my walls while I navigated the day's demands, handling my possessions, rearranging them. To what end? What quarry? From the knife block I withdrew a chef's blade, its heft a small, cold comfort against the burgeoning dread. Thus armed, I pursued the footprints toward the bedroom hallway. They navigated the narrow passage, halting directly before my closed bedroom door. A second set, fainter now, ghost-like overlays beginning to desiccate, tracked back toward the living area, a journey into my private space, and then a return. I stood sentinel outside the door, knife poised, straining to hear. Silence reigned within. My hand reached for the knob. It felt cool, impassive, a deep inhalation. Then I turned it, slowly, pushing the door inward. Darkness greeted me. My free hand scrabbled for the switch, eyes fixed on the unrevealed space. The overhead light stuttered, then flared, illuminating. Nothing overtly amiss. The bed, neatly made that morning, closet doors shut, window latched, yet an undeniable wrongness permeated the air. My gaze swept the room again, snagging on the dresser, the drawers, not quite flush. I remembered with certainty pressing them firmly shut after dressing. The lowest one possessed a tendency to drift open otherwise. Closer inspection confirmed haste. Clothes within were rumpled, disturbed, not folded with my usual precision. A search, my belongings rifled through. The closet beckoned next. I advanced, blade held ready. The bifold doors closed but unlatched. Another deviation from my ingrained habits. My hand, trembling almost imperceptibly, grasped the handle. A swift tug, a backward step, knife raised defensively. Emptiness. Only my garments hung, suspended in the still air. But here too, a subtle discord. The spacing between hangers, my obsessive 1-inch rule utterly violated. Some clumped together, others isolated by wide voids. My closet too had been subject to this unseen rummaging. Last refuge, the bathroom. Its door stood open, framing interior darkness. The damp footprints led directly to its threshold. I flicked the light switch. A cursory scan revealed normalcy until my eyes fixed on the shower curtain, drawn fully closed, a thing I never did, consciously avoiding mildew. My heart hammered against my ribs. The knife felt slick in my sweating grip. Reaching forward, another ragged breath, I ripped the curtain back along its track, empty. Stark white tub, fixtures, tiles, all utterly, unnervingly dry. No trace of water, no lingering humidity. From whence then came the sodden trail. Retracing my steps to the living room, I followed the phantom path once more. Its origin point remained baffling, mid-floor, as if the visitor had simply coalesced from the air. Impossible. I craned my neck, scrutinizing the ceiling above. Unblemished plaster, no vents, nothing. Windows rechecked, locked from within. The sliding glass door to the small balcony, secured, alarm engaged. The front door, the deadbolt had been thrown, turned only by my key upon arrival. The spare secreted in the hallway alcove beneath the fire extinguisher housing, remained undisturbed in its taped concealment. Logic fractured against the inexplicable reality. I sank onto the sofa, knife still clutched, staring at the prints. They were fading now, the moisture receding, leaving only faint, ghostly outlines on the dark wood. Soon, mere hours, they would vanish entirely, leaving no tangible proof of this violation. Only the disarray remained. The drawers, the hangers, the provocatively placed bleach bottle. My phone vibrated in my pocket, a sharp buzz that made me flinch. A message from my supervisor. Is the quarterly analysis finalized for the morning briefing? The briefing. Mundanity intruded, sharp and unwelcome. Work awaited. Sustenance was required. Life, apparently, persisted. Mysterious footprints notwithstanding. But concentration was a shattered lens. Every innocuous sound became amplified, menacing. The climate control cycling, the distant churn of the ice maker. Familiar domestic noises now imbued with threat. I rose, compelled to verify the locks again and again. Began opening cabinets, peering into closets at random, uncertain what I sought. Hours bled away in this state of agitated vigilance. Food remained untouched. Appetite had fled. I merely paced, checked, rechecked. The footprints surrendered fully to the dry air, leaving barely discernible discolorations like old water stains. Perhaps sanity was fraying. Perhaps stress had birthed a waking nightmare. Yet the tangible evidence persisted. The disturbed drawers, the violated closet symmetry, the sentinel bleach bottle. Subtle markers of an intrusion, real and unnerving. Near midnight, profound weariness began to erode the sharp edges of anxiety. I hadn't rested since returning home. My spine ached, my feet throbbed. Sleep was a necessity, yet the bedroom felt tainted, unsafe. I retrieved my duvet and pillow, establishing a makeshift camp on the living room sofa, orienting myself to command views of both the front door and the hallway entrance. Phone and knife rested on the coffee table within immediate reach. I lay in the artificial twilight, listening to the city's nocturnal murmur. 15 stories below, the drone of traffic, the faint cry of sirens, sporadic shouts or horns. Usually soporific, these sounds now underscored my isolation. Sleep arrived in brief, shallow bursts. Each small creak or sigh of the building jolted me back to awareness, eyes snapping open, scanning the shifting shadows for movement. Always nothing, only darkness and silence held sway. Dawn was painting the eastern sky with bruised light when a deeper exhaustion finally claimed me. Fitful dreams followed, dripping water, echoing footsteps, the distinct impression of a figure standing near, observing. I awoke with a violent start, heart seizing. Morning light streamed through the windows, rendering the apartment starkly normal. Another day had dawned. Rising stiffly from the couch's awkward embrace, I moved toward the kitchen on autopilot, initiating the coffee ritual, attempting to rationalize the previous day's events as stress-induced phantasmagoria. But as the machine began its gurgling brew, my gaze fell upon the countertop. Something new, something that turned my blood to ice water. A handprint, starkly wet upon the cool laminate, fresh, droplets still glistening on its surface. I recoiled, phone fumbled from my pocket, dialing the 3 digits that felt both necessary and futile. Emergency operator, state your situation. My apartment. Someone is inside. Or they were. I can't be sure. There were wet prints, now a handprint, but everything is locked. 15th floor, I don't understand how. Sir, please take a breath. Are you in immediate danger right now? No, I don't believe so. But someone was definitely here. They disturbed my belongings. They leave these wet traces, but there's no entry point. Your address, please. We'll dispatch officers to investigate. I provided the details. 10 minutes, they promised. I paced near the entrance, a caged animal. The damp handprint on the counter began its slow retreat into the laminate, mirroring the footprint's evaporation. 2 uniformed officers arrived, projecting an air of weary patience. I recounted the tale, guided them through the rooms. They made notes, offered professionally concerned expressions, but their skepticism was palpable. No forced entry, nothing overtly stolen, just my disjointed account of vanishing wet marks and rearranged possessions. Might want to get those locks changed, sir, one advised mildly. Easy enough for someone to get a key copied. But the deadbolt, I protested. It was engaged, and that doesn't explain prints appearing in the middle of the room. They exchanged a brief, telling glance. Unstable. We'll file a report, the other stated, closing his notebook. Keep vigilant. Call us back if you witness an actual forced entry. And they departed. I canceled my workday, citing sudden illness. Remained in the apartment, watching, waiting. Nothing stirred. As dusk fell, the prospect of another night on the sofa was unbearable. I retreated to a hotel 10 blocks distant, hemorrhaging money for a sterile room that offered little solace. Sleep remained elusive, though the unfamiliar sounds were less terrifying than the familiar ones of my own home. The following day demanded a return, work, meetings, the inescapable rhythm of life. I changed the locks, a hollow gesture performed against my better judgment. Whatever trespassed here didn't concern itself with tumblers and keys. Days slid into a week. Silence. Stillness. No further manifestations. Gradually, cautiously, I allowed myself to relax. Reclaimed my own bed. Perhaps it had been a bizarre, isolated incident, a freak occurrence. Then, precisely 1 week to the day, I came home from the office, and the wet footprints were back. A different configuration this time, leading with chilling directness toward my bedroom. And this time, something awaited me within. But that is a narrative for another time. Fear, you see, is transformative. It corrodes certainty, recasts the mundane as menacing. Every creak, every shadow, every minor deviation from routine becomes suspect. I once considered myself observant. Now I am pathologically so. The precise coordinates of every object, the apartment's acoustic signature at varying hours, the exact alignment of hangers in my closet. These details consume me. Others might have fled, sought refuge elsewhere, but I remain, because I understand with chilling clarity that relocation would be futile. Whatever leaves the aqueous traces, whatever sifts through my life, whatever watches, it knows no boundaries, so I wait, and I watch. And the knife remains by my bed. And each morning, my first act is to scan the floorboards. They will return. They always do. The key grated in the lock of the salt-worn door. My first Friday unlocking what I'd hoped was simple solitude beside the restless sea. A quiet haven, the advertisement promised, nestled beside an identical twin unit, separated only by a stout common wall. Peace, seclusion, the rhythmic sigh of the waves. That was the allure. My backpack held the essentials. The 2-hour drive was meant to excise the city's clamor from my bones. Excitement wasn't the quarry. Sand beneath bare feet, the brine-laced air filling my lungs, an escape from the gnawing pressures back home. That was the extent of my ambition. Yet, from that inaugural night, an anomaly clung to the place, a subtle wrongness that pricked at the edges of repose. A diminutive porch surveyed the narrow ribbon of asphalt snaking towards the beach. Inside, the living space offered an aged settee, a low table bearing the rings of past glasses. To the right, a kitchenette huddled, refrigerator humming, a few cupboards stark against the wall. Standard fare, really. Walls the color of bone, tiled floors cool underfoot, paint flaking like dry skin around the window frames. Luxury wasn't on the menu, nor was it expected. This was coastal simplicity, stripped bare. The bedroom lay tucked away aft, housing a solid bedstead, a compact wardrobe, space enough for the oscillating fan I'd brought. Adjacent, the bathroom, passably clean, towels folded, nothing overtly amiss, nothing to ignite suspicion. After tossing my duffel onto the settee, provisions became the priority. A half-mile stroll led me to the small grocer, the sea breeze a welcome balm, its salty tang threading through the quiet lanes. Dusk was painting the sky violet and rose by my return. The rental's air hung thick, stagnant. I secured the door, flicked the switch for the living room's ceiling fan. As the blades began their lazy rotation, a sudden, almost violent sweetness flooded the air, thick as pollen, reminiscent of hothouse blooms, gardenia, perhaps, or tuberose. A jolt of surprise. No such perfume had greeted my arrival. My gaze swept the room, hunting for hidden diffusers, potpourri bowls. Nothing. A cleaning agent, I reasoned. Something potent the owner favored, maybe mopped into the very tiles. Intense, yes, but not intolerable. Groceries stowed, a simple meal prepared and consumed. I settled with my phone. The fragrance didn't ebb, nor did it swell. A persistent, aromatic phantom haunting the background. Dawn found me beach-bound. Hours melted under the sun, worries dissolved in the surf. Returning near sunset, I pushed open the door and the floral assault struck anew, fiercer this time, cloying, suffocating, like burying one's face in an armful of funereal lilies. My eyes stung, watered. I threw open the windows, craving the clean salt air, though I distinctly recalled securing them before leaving. Could a draft siphon sense from the adjoining unit? Possible, though the dividing wall seemed substantial, impervious. Still, what other logic applied? The neighbor's side remained inert. Shutters canted shut, no lights piercing the evening gloom, no vehicle nesting in the drive. An absence, profound and still. Vacant for the off-season, I presumed. The letting agent had murmured something about the owner, Mr. Silas Thorne, using his half sporadically. It seemed plausible. The puzzle of the persistent perfume lingered, yet I filed it away under residual cleaning chemicals. Subsequent weekends fell into a rhythm. Pack, drive, deposit bag, seek the shore. And invariably, upon returning in the late afternoon light, that potent sweetness would lie in wait within the living room. My searches became more thorough. Behind the settee, beneath the table, peering into vents. Fruitless, no discernible origin, No wilting bouquets, no waxen candles, no joss sticks smoldering, not even a suspiciously locked closet, everything exposed, mundane. Stranger still was its departure. If I remained indoors through the early evening, the scent would cling for 20 minutes, maybe 30, then vanish. Not fade, but cease. Present, then absent. An olfactory switch, flipped by unseen hands. One Saturday, motion flickered at the periphery. An engine's grumble drew my eye to the window. A slate-gray saloon eased into the adjacent driveway. From it unfolded a gaunt figure, Mr. Thorne, presumably. He moved with a skittish haste, eyes darting as if wary of observation. A small valise retrieved from the boot, a swift entry, the click of his door shutting. No neighborly wave, no acknowledging glance. Entirely consumed by his arrival. I held back, respecting the palpable desire for privacy. Relief flickered, though. The unit wasn't derelict, merely occupied by a phantom. That night, sleep claimed me near midnight, a book resting on my chest. The bedroom window cracked to admit the ocean's murmur. Serenity reigned, until a distinct thump resonated through the shared wall. Not deafening, but sharp, unexpected. Mr. Thorne, perhaps, rearranging furniture, dropping something weighty. I listened, poised for subsequent sounds. Silence returned. Minutes stretched, and slumber reclaimed me. Around 3, thirst pulled me from bed. Padding towards the kitchen, I kept the lights off, navigating by moonlight filtering through the blinds. Crossing the living room threshold, the floral scent surged, an invisible wave breaking over me. So potent it arrested my movement. It felt freshly deployed, as if an atomizer had hissed seconds before. I fumbled for the lamp beside the settee, flooding the small space with weak yellow light. Empty, windows sealed tight. No intruder. Exhaustion overriding curiosity, I drank my water, retreated to bed, and fell into uneasy dreams. By morning, the gray saloon was gone. An early departure, it seemed. This pattern etched itself onto my weekends. His fleeting appearances, late Friday or Saturday arrivals, pre-dawn departures. Never a word exchanged, just glimpses of his hurried ingress and egress, a wraith haunting the edges of my retreat. Then came the weekend. The unease curdled into something sharper, something that lodges in my memory still. A long, sun-drenched Saturday spent with local acquaintances, surfing, lunch, meandering conversation. I returned after dark, weary but content. The moment I crossed the threshold, the floral miasma slammed into me, eyes watering, chest tightening instinctively. I dropped my beach bag, reached for the overhead light switch. Just as my fingers found the plastic toggle, I froze. A whisper, soft, indistinct, yet undeniably present in the room. My pulse hammered against my ribs. Straining to hear, I could discern no words, only a low, sibilant current, like a hushed recitation or a prayer breathed inches away. Perhaps the television next door? A radio? But the sound felt intimate, immediate, seeming to emanate from the shadowed space behind the settee. Stealthily, on stockinged feet across the cool tiles, I crept closer. The whispering continued, a steady, rhythmic murmur, then ceased abruptly. I flicked on the corner lamp, stepped around the furniture. Nothing. The room held only stillness. Front door locked, windows shut. The floral scent hung so heavy it felt viscous, stinging my nostrils. I stood rigid, mind racing, grappling for explanation. Then a faint rustle. Fabric brushing fabric, soft footfalls on a non-existent rug. My heart vaulted, a cold prickle tracing my scalp. Bravery isn't my forte, but paranoia isn't my habit either. Yet clammy sweat beaded at my nape. "Hello," I breathed, the sound foolishly small in the charged air. Silence answered, thick and absolute, save for the cloying sweetness. I retreated towards the hallway, eyes fixed on the living room's inanimate objects. After a tense minute or two, the quiet felt complete again. The overpowering scent began to recede, vanishing with that unnerving rapidity, like snuffing a candle. Only the refrigerator's low hum remained. Compelled by a force I couldn't name, I searched again. Closets yielded nothing. Curtains concealed only walls. Under the settee, dust bunnies reigned. No device, no hidden speaker, no source for sound or scent. Sleep was impossible. I perched on a dining chair, hyper-vigilant, scanning the living room until exhaustion finally dragged me under near midnight. Sleep offered no refuge, filled with fragmented dreams of shadowy figures standing sentinel in the room, their whispered words just beyond comprehension. The following day, I felt frayed, brittle. I packed hastily, departed earlier than planned, the drive back consumed by internal debate. Cancel the lease, forfeit the deposit. But the price was fair, the coastal escape a genuine need. I rationalized. Plumbing quirks, drafts carrying external sounds, an overtired mind conjuring phantoms from mundane noises. I decided to persist, attributing the phenomena to an overactive imagination. The next Friday evening, I returned armed, a canister of industrial-strength odor neutralizer. Upon arrival, I sprayed liberally, hoping to preemptively cleanse the air, break the cycle. Initially, success. The sharp chemical tang, while unpleasant, masked any hint of floral sweetness. Perhaps this was the mundane solution. Around 9, I stretched out on the settee, an old film flickering on my laptop. Windows secured, the night outside cool and still. Normalcy seemed restored, until 11. A subtle chill permeated the air. I sat up. The lamp beside me flickered erratically, and then, insinuating itself through the chemical haze, came the familiar, sickeningly sweet perfume. From nowhere, my throat tightened. Nausea stirred. Rising, I paced the small living room, senses straining. Nothing visibly altered. No spectral lights, no hidden mechanisms. Just the oppressive, burgeoning scent. It felt suffocating. And then a soft murmuring, seemingly just behind my shoulder. I spun around. Empty space met my gaze. The wall, the television stand. The whispering intensified slightly, clearer now, yet still unintelligible. A calm, measured cadence spoken across the room. My heart hammered, gooseflesh rippling across my arms, fists clenched, indecision warring within me. Flee or document. My phone fumbled from my pocket, camera activated. Pointless. The microphone captured nothing but my own ragged breathing. The fan's whir. The whispering ceased. The scent peaked, an almost physical pressure, then vanished utterly. Gone. The adrenaline left a dull ache in my chest, my legs unsteady. Answers. I needed answers. Perhaps Mr. Thorne held the key. I stepped outside into the shared driveway. His side of the duplex was a dark facade, shutters sealed tight, no glimmer of light within. Pressing my ear against the cool stucco of the front wall yielded nothing. No television drone, no voices, no stirrings. Only the distant percussion of waves on sand, the wind sighing through the coastal shrubs. I stood there a long while, coaxing my breath back to rhythm. The salt air helped, marginally, but the knot of unease remained tightly cinched. The ensuing weekends brought variations on the theme: the return from the beach, the floral ambuscade, sometimes lingering, sometimes fleeting, sporadic whispers, hushed chants just at the edge of hearing, never a tangible presence. My sleep deteriorated. I'd jerk awake in the deep hours, convinced a voice murmured from the living room, only to find silence. Mr. Thorne's visits remained erratic, brief, nocturnal. One Sunday morning, I intercepted him as he loaded his valise. "Morning," I offered, aiming for casualness. He granted a curt nod, his eyes shifting nervously. "Ever notice a strange floral smell in your place?" I ventured. He paused, a flicker of something unreadable in his expression. "No," he clipped, then slid into his car, offering no reciprocal query, no curiosity. The engine caught and he reversed out, gone. The interaction felt like closing a door already shut. Here I sit now, phone propped on my knee, tapping out these words. It's late. My pulse thrums a nervous rhythm because the scent returned 15 minutes ago. It hangs in the air as I type, heavy and sweet. Each moment stretches, pregnant with the anticipation of whispers. Sweat films my brow, the fine hairs on my arms are erect. Logic offers no solace. Chemical scents don't materialize and evaporate instantaneously. They disperse, fade. This aroma appears. The whispers coincide with its peak intensity, as if an unseen speaker draws near, breathes their secrets into the room. Nothing tonight, not yet, but the waiting gnaws. I find myself glancing constantly over my shoulder. The television screen reflects only my own tense face. My muscles are coiled, ready to spring at the slightest sound. The silence, in its own way, is becoming more menacing than the phenomena themselves. My sole comfort lies in the ignition key, resting in my pocket. Escape is always an option, yet the deposit binds me and a stubborn refusal to be chased off by what? Shadows, scents, whispers I can't record. I cling to the possibility of overreaction. There's no empirical proof, no audio files, no spectral photographs, just the unreliable landscape of my own senses, my own creeping dread. It's not terrifying enough to send me screaming into the night, but it's a persistent, low-grade corrosion of my peace. Is it the house? Is Mr. Thorne burning some exotic incense that somehow permeates the wall, only to be instantly neutralized? But the immediacy, the vanishing act, the murmurs seemingly inside my space. Each return journey culminates in the same ritual of apprehension. Will the turn of the key release only stale air or that sickly sweet perfume? Part of me wants to confront Thorne again, demand explanation, but he remains elusive, guarded. So I remain, caught between the desire for escape and a reluctant curiosity. The beach still calls, the sun still warms, the space still offers a reprieve from urban life. But the nights, approaching the small porch steps, sliding the key home, my stomach clenches. I pause, listen, brace myself for that olfactory tide. Sometimes blessed normalcy, other times it's there, waiting, unpredictable. Fatigue weighs heavy now. This constant vigilance is exhausting. My hand trembles slightly as I prepare to extinguish the lamp. My ears strain against the quiet, anticipating the moment it might break. Will the hushed chanting begin? Will the cloying sweetness swell? All I crave is an unremarkable night, but this place has taught me not to expect one. I can prove nothing, yet I can explain nothing away. All I know is the smell, waiting faithfully after every beach excursion, settling in the living room, an invisible presence redolent of funereal flowers and arcane whispers. Is it me, or is it this house? The question hangs unanswered weekend after weekend. Will the door open to silence or to that suffocating fragrance and a voice that has no right to be there? For now, I wait, uneasy, perpetually glancing over my shoulder, hoping for clarity that never arrives. The apartment whispered promises, affordability, a pulse point location, tranquility. Nestled directly above a boulangerie, its primary daytime offering was the perfume of baking bread, a scent that insinuated itself through my open kitchen window each morning, redolent of slow, sun-drenched weekends. For the initial handful of days, this urban idyll felt complete. Precisely at 10 each evening, the bakery below extinguished its lights, plunging the street into a profound hush. No traffic's roar, no boisterous neighbors, no rumbling late-night deliveries. I believed I'd unearthed a sanctuary. My first night, adrift in the borderlands of sleep, a delicate percussion reached me. My bedroom adjoins the short passage leading to the living area, and through this corridor the sound traveled ethereal and faint. So distant I nearly dismissed it. Metal kissing porcelain, the ghost of a fork meeting a plate, yet soft enough to be absorbed into the building's nocturnal murmurs. I assigned it no great weight. The following day unfolded amidst the satisfying chaos of settling in. Cardboard monoliths yielded their contents. The sofa found its anchor. The television flickered to life. Existence felt reassuringly mundane. Below, the bakery hummed, dispatching warm, yeasty exhalations upward. I descended, procured a crusty loaf and coffee, exchanging pleasantries with the proprietor, Mr. Dubois, whose smile seemed genuine as he welcomed his new upstairs tenant. That evening, post-10, the bakery lights winked out. I watched Mr. Dubois secure the door. By midnight, stillness reigned. Then, near 2, while fetching water in the kitchen, the sound returned. More insistent this time. It emanated from somewhere beneath, or perhaps all around. The distinct clatter of utensils against crockery. I strained to discern if it penetrated the walls shared with my neighbors. But they were early sleepers, their presence rarely felt through the thick plaster. This sound possessed a peculiar specificity, slow, measured, suggestive of someone dining. A fork's chime, a silence, the scrape of a knife. It persisted for several minutes. Leaning against the cool kitchen counter, I listened, a tension coiling in my forearms, the fine hairs on my nape prickling. A wrongness permeated the air. No one belonged in the bakery kitchen at this hour. The staff I'd observed departed before 11. Sleep became elusive. My thoughts snagged on that phantom clinking. Though disbelief in specters is my default, a logical explanation remained fugitive. Morning saw me downstairs for coffee, where I casually probed Mr. Dubois about late-night activity, his brow furrowed. Absolutely not, he assured me. The staff adhered strictly to schedule, the kitchen securely locked. I opted to shelve the unease. Old buildings harbor strange acoustics. Pipes sing, floorboards echo distant steps. Overthinking served no purpose. Yet for a week, the ritual held. 10 o'clock, bakery closes, silence descends. 2 or 3 a.m., the muted symphony of silverware begins. not loud, but undeniably present. Once I pressed my ear to my apartment door. The hallway beyond lay inert. I migrated to the living room window overlooking the bakery roof. Nothing. Sock-footed, I prowled my own space, seeking the sound's epicenter, but it seemed simultaneously everywhere and nowhere. With each recurrence, my heart hammered a frantic rhythm against my ribs, a peculiar chill blooming low in my stomach, the visceral recognition of profound irregularity. One night, resolve hardening, I descended to visually confirm the bakery's darkness. The clock showed 2:30. Keys clutched, shoes donned, I slipped into the dimly lit corridor, my own breath unnervingly loud in the stillness. Each stair creaked under deliberate steps, my legs betraying a slight tremor. At the landing, I peered through the bakery door's small glass panel, utter blackness within. No whirring machines, no residual oven glow, no flicker of movement. The comforting bread scent had long dissipated. Releasing a pent-up breath, I tested the door, locked solid. I lingered, listening intently. Silence. But as I pivoted to retreat, the faintest clink, a fork striking china, whispered from the bakery's depths. Not loud, barely audible, yet enough to root me to the spot. My chest constricted, fingers trembled, gripping the banister. Turning back, I pressed my ear flat against the cold glass. Nothing. Only the frantic thrum of my own pulse. Defeated, I climbed back to the dubious safety of my apartment. The next morning, I confronted Mr. Dubois more directly, recounting the nocturnal noises. Might I be dreaming, he queried gently, or perhaps misinterpreting neighbors? No, I insisted, the sound was distinct. He shook his head, reiterating that post-hours entry was impossible, adding that the bakery's security system was armed nightly. His certainty silenced further questions. The specter of paranoia loomed. Night after night, the pattern persisted. The sound, lasting 5, perhaps 10 minutes, arrived like clockwork. I'd lie rigid in bed, muscles clenched beneath the blankets. Earplugs proved porous armor against the intrusion. The clink-clink sliced through. One desperate night, I turned on the television, hoping to drown it out. Yet beneath the dialogue's ebb and flow, the phantom tapping persisted. My jaw ached from clenching. Headaches became morning companions. Action was imperative. One evening, near closing, I asked Leo, one of the younger bakers, about strange sounds. He offered only a blank stare, stating that once his shift ended, he was gone until dawn. Perhaps check with the landlord, he suggested. Hesitantly, I penned a note detailing the disturbances and slipped it under the door of the landlord's sparsely used ground floor office. Mr. Silas never responded. That night demanded strategy. All lights extinguished save a lone lamp casting long shadows in the living room. Television silenced, I sat sentinel on the sofa, notepad poised. My intent, to document precise timings, capture nuances. At 1:55 a.m., it began. The soft cadence of dishware. Scrape, pause, scrape. Then a rapid triplet of taps. It resonated directly below, seemingly just beneath my floorboards. Adrenaline surged, slicking my palms, chilling my arms despite the room's temperature. Motionless, I absorbed the rhythm for 5 minutes. The sonic portrait of a deliberate, unhurried meal, consumed in slow motion. Faintly, almost subliminally, I detected what might have been a quiet swallow, a soft exhalation. The hairs on my forearms bristled. I scribbled 1:55, 2:03. Silence fell, Cautiously, I rose, eased open my door, and stepped into the dusty-smelling hallway. The ancient building seemed to absorb my presence. Toward the stairwell I crept, floorboards groaning their protestations. My throat felt parched. Reaching the landing, I peered over the railing into the tenebrous void below. Stillness, waiting. My heart pounded, a frantic bird against my ribs. As I turned to retreat, the clatter resumed, startlingly close now, seeming to emanate from the direction of my own apartment. I froze. It lasted mere seconds, then ceased. A glacial touch traced my spine. I scrambled back inside, bolting the door, knees buckling as I slumped onto the sofa, staring blankly at the floor. Daylight brought attempts at rationalization. Could pipes conspire to mimic such specific sounds? Unlikely. I knew the gurgles and groans of plumbing. This was different, possessing the clear timbre of cutlery on ceramic. The thought of inviting someone over surfaced, but being new to the city, my social circle was nascent, and the prospect of asking someone to vigilantly await phantom dinner noises felt acutely embarrassing. Sleep debt mounted. Grogginess became my baseline. Morning hunger vanished. My nerves frayed thin. Each night devolved into tense anticipation, my stomach knotting as midnight approached. I tried white noise generators. The subtle clink pierced through. One night, near 3, frustration boiled over. Pulling on sweats, flashlight in hand, I stole downstairs once more. Perhaps this time a sliver of light, a shadow. The door remained locked. My flashlight beam sliced through the glass, illuminating empty racks, wiped clean tables, and unnervingly sterile order. No movement, no sound, and yet a phantom echo, a fork on porcelain, seemed to resonate solely within my own skull. Chest tight, breath catching, I fled back upstairs, heartbeat drumming, forehead hot. I queried Mr. Henderson across the hall. Sound asleep by 10, he claimed, praising the thick walls that guaranteed mutual oblivion. I risked asking Mrs. Gable upstairs, an elderly woman, about late-night eating habits. She bristled, offended, stating she hadn't left her bed after 8 in years. That left the bakery, its staff adamant, its owner insistent on impenetrable security. Weeks bled into a month, the nocturnal ritual immutable, sometimes 2 a.m., sometimes 3. Always those few minutes of slow, deliberate clatter, always the same pattern. I vacillated between attempts at stoic ignorance and frantic countermeasures. Headphones offered temporary, imperfect solace. Still, my body remained attuned, tensing involuntarily as the hour neared. My hands developed a slight tremor while washing dishes. The sense of being proximate to something unseen, unheard by others, burrowed deep under my skin. One evening, Matteo, a co-worker, lingered after sharing pizza in my living room. Hesitantly, I confessed the nightly occurrences. Skepticism flickered in his eyes. As he prepared to leave around 1:45 a.m., I urged him to stay. "Witness this," I pleaded silently. We sat in weighted silence. At precisely 2 a.m., it began. Matteo froze mid-breath. His eyes widened. "That," he whispered, voice hushed, "is definitely metal on ceramic." He rose, tiptoed to the window, peered out, searching for an external source. Nothing. Our eyes met across the room, a shared unease palpable in the charged air. We listened until it faded. "Man," he breathed, shaking his head slightly. "That's seriously weird." He departed soon after, visibly unsettled. At least the haunting wasn't solely mine. The source remains elusive. my inquiries exhausted, landlord shrugging off checks on ventilation or old appliances, a plumber finding no anomalies, Mr. Silas refusing further expense, Mr. Dubois unwavering in his denials. Sometimes, hearing the sound, my throat constricts, my scalp tingles, an image forms. Someone seated at a table in the pitch-black bakery below, methodically consuming a meal unseen, unheard by the waking world. It makes my skin crawl. Late-night excursions ceased. The fear became too potent. Early bedtimes proved futile. The sound became my unwanted alarm clock. Late nights offered no escape. Exhaustion couldn't deafen me. Each dawn breaks, heralded by the comforting aroma of bread wafting into my kitchen. The bakery stirs to life at 6, drawing early risers. By then, I exist in a liminal state between waking and sleep. The nocturnal tension receding but never fully dissolving, a residue clinging to my awareness. A suspicion lingers. This building holds more secrets than just mine. Moving out remains a distant aspiration, for now I am tethered to this place, bound to this inexplicable late-night ritual. The story has no neat conclusion. The noises persist, precise as cutlery, elusive as ghosts. No culprit found, no explanation offered. Just me, my apartment, and the spectral dinner party below. Night after night, I lie awake and wait for the metallic tap to echo through the floorboards. Sometimes in the deepest quiet, it feels as if the building itself draws breath, settles down for a secret meal in the encompassing darkness. It's a chilling thought I cannot shake. All that remains is to endure, to listen, caught in the echo of a sound that should not be. That tiny, insistent crimson pulse winking from the bedroom's shadowed corner. It wasn't just a light. It was the precise moment our idyllic retreat fractured, splintering into a nightmare sharp enough to draw blood. What began as a pilgrimage toward reconnection, a balm for frayed nerves, warped instantly into a suffocating game where Liam and I were the unwilling players, trapped within walls that held us in their unblinking gaze. Booking that secluded haven, nestled deep in the woods, was meant to mend the predictable rhythm of our lives. The drone of work, the flicker of screens, the oblivion of sleep, cycling endlessly. We craved escape, a space to rediscover the embers that first drew us together. And there it was online, a listing promising sylvan charm, a cabin barely 2 hours from the city's relentless thrum. Images beckoned, a hearth crackling with imagined warmth, a deep porcelain tub promising shared solace, a veranda embracing a lake of impossible stillness. Agnes, the proprietor, boasted a constellation of 5-star accolades, testimonials praising her meticulous care. Without a second thought, we claimed it, the days dwindling toward our departure marked by an almost feverish anticipation. The journey unfolded like a slow exhale, the city's grip loosening with each mile devoured by winding, increasingly solitary roads. We arrived as daylight bled into gold, bathing the small, whitewashed cabin in an ethereal glow. It stood more storybook perfect than pixels could capture. Agnes materialized on the doorstep, a compact woman whose years lent her a certain grace, her smile wide, her eyes seemingly kind. A whirlwind tour followed, amenities noted, local curiosities suggested. As she turned to leave, a bottle of deep red wine appeared in her hands, pressed into mine. "A little welcome," she offered, a conspiratorial wink accompanying the gesture. Do enjoy yourselves. The latch clicked shut behind her, and Liam, shedding his city skin, flashed a grin alive with mischief. Last one to the bedroom, he challenged, already toeing off his boots. Laughter bubbled up inside me, light and unfamiliar after months of muted existence, and I gave chase. The bedroom mirrored the cabin's quaint allure, a vast, yielding bed draped in soft linens, windows framing the placid lake like living portraits. Liam collapsed onto the mattress with a sigh that spoke volumes. "This," he murmured, pulling me down beside him, "is exactly right." That first evening drifted by in a haze of quiet wonder. We wandered the cabin and its whispering environs, absorbing the profound silence, a stark contrast to the urban cacophony we called home. Dinner was a shared creation in the surprisingly well-appointed kitchen, followed by Agnes's wine on the veranda as pinpricks of starlight emerged in the deepening velvet sky. It was later, preparing for sleep, the quiet pressing in, that my eyes snagged on it. High in the corner, near the ceiling's edge, a minuscule point of red light, pulsing with unnerving regularity. A smoke detector? No, too small, wrongly placed. "Liam," I breathed, the word barely disturbing the stillness. "Look up there. What is that?" He traced my gaze, his brow knitting. Is that a camera?" The chilling certainty struck us simultaneously. Observed, watched. How long? Had our earlier closeness, our private moments been captured? Revulsion crawled over my skin. A frantic, panicked search commenced, unearthing 3 more electronic eyes. One nestled amongst living room knickknacks, another surveying the kitchen and inducing a wave of nausea. A third lens in the bathroom aimed squarely at the shower stall. "We need to leave," Liam whispered, his voice tight with tremor. I nodded, already reaching for our hastily discarded bags. But my hand froze on the doorknob, a colder dread seizing me. "Liam," I whispered back, the sound thin. "What if they know? Right now? What if they saw us find them?" The unspoken implications hung between us, thick and suffocating. Whoever monitored these feeds would have witnessed our discovery, and anyone capable of such clandestine surveillance. What else were they capable of to protect their secret? 2 hours separated us from familiarity, marooned in unfamiliar territory, utterly ignorant of who watched or how close they might be. Logic screamed for flight, for the anonymous safety of the highway. Yet something else held me fast, a surge of violation, a hot indignation at this grotesque intrusion. "We need proof," I said, the words tasting like defiance. "If we just run, they'll do this again, to someone else." Liam's uncertainty warred with agreement, but he nodded. "Okay, fast though. This place, it feels wrong now." We moved with forced calm, documenting each camera's insidious placement with our phones. I managed to dislodge one of the smaller devices, its cold plastic settling into my pocket like a captured shard of malice. We were in the kitchen, voices hushed in urgent strategy, when the sound split the night. The distinct crunch of tires on the gravel drive. Liam's eyes widened, mirroring my own sudden terror. "Is that?" A glance through the window confirmed it. Agnes's car, rolling to a stop. "Quick!" I hissed, adrenaline surging. Act normal. Pretend everything's fine. We scrambled, adopting postures of casual repose. Liam snatching up a book, me feigning interest in the refrigerator's contents. Still, the rap on the door jolted us both. I pulled it open, stretching my lips into what I prayed resembled a welcoming smile. Agnes, back so soon. Everything all right? She stood framed in the doorway, her smile unchanged. Yet now it seemed predatory, stripped of its earlier warmth. "Oh, perfectly fine," she chirped, her tone unnervingly light. Just realized I neglected to mention a few little quirks about the cabin. May I? Every nerve ending shrieked denial, urged me to slam the door shut. But that would be confirmation. I stepped aside, granting her entry. Her gaze swept the room, a rapid inventory. I saw her eyes linger, just for a fraction of a second, on the empty space in the corner where the kitchen camera had been. A flicker disturbed the placid surface of her expression. Annoyance. Calculation. So, she pivoted back to us, that disquieting smile firmly reinstated, settling in nicely. Liam, bless his nerve, managed a credible nod. Yes, it's wonderful. So quiet here. Agnes beamed. I'm thrilled. You know, guest safety is my top priority, especially way out here. It's why I invested in the security system, just for peace of mind, you understand. The lie was breathtaking in its audacity. For a moment, words failed me. Liam filled the silence, his voice only marginally strained. Security system? Oh, we hadn't noticed one. Well, that's rather the point, isn't it? Agnes returned with a brittle laugh. Not much good if it's obvious, but rest assured, you're quite safe here. I make absolutely certain of it. The message resonated clear and cold. She knew we knew, and she was signaling that awareness, a vertiginous dance of bluff and counter-bluff, with our well-being as the stakes. Well, I managed, striving for a steady tone. We certainly appreciate you looking out for us, but we were just about to call it a night, actually. Her eyes narrowed, the movement almost imperceptible. Of course, she purred, all smoothness and false solicitude. Wouldn't want to keep you. Sleep deeply. The instant the door clicked shut, sealing her out, Liam and I locked eyes, the shared fear stark and palpable. Out, he breathed. Now. I didn't need telling twice. Our repacked bags were already by the door. We slipped out the back, unwilling to risk Agnes spotting our departure from the front. The woods loomed, dark and inscrutable, yet infinitely preferable to another minute inside that violated space. We reached the car undetected, relief warring with lingering dread. But as I turned the ignition key, the sudden flare of headlights painted a figure at the tree line. Agnes. She raised a hand in a slow, deliberate wave, that unnerving smile fixed on her face like a mask. I slammed the accelerator, gravel spitting beneath the tires as we tore down the drive. In the rearview mirror, her figure diminished, yet remained statue still, watching us vanish into the night, as if possessing some secret knowledge of our trajectory, our fate. We drove without pause, fueled by adrenaline and fear, until the familiar glow of the city enveloped us. The following day found us in a sterile police station, presenting the dislodged camera, the damning photos on our phones. They documented our statement, but skepticism radiated from them like cold. Without catching Agnes red-handed, it dissolved into a he said, she said impasse. Weeks bled into months. I found myself compulsively checking the online listing. It remained active, accumulating fresh 5-star endorsements. A chilling question echoed how many others had walked into Agnes's web, their private selves archived for unknown, unsettling purposes. Liam and I, we're navigating the aftermath. The terror, paradoxically, forged a stronger bond between us. We now lend our voices to advocating for privacy, for tighter controls on ephemeral rentals. Yet honesty compels admission. It scarred us. A heightened vigilance shadows us now, an awareness of unseen threats lurking beneath benign surfaces. And sometimes in the deep quiet of the night, my gaze still drifts to the corners of our own bedroom, instinctively searching for that phantom pulse of crimson light. The first pair of lumens swimming in my rear view were just another set of lights on the long, cold hall. Anonymous, forgettable. It was only when they reappeared, ghosting me through the swirling snow for the third time, that the ice truly entered my veins. I wasn't just being followed, I was being marked. Before me, the Borealis Trail unspooled, a slick black artery through an ocean of white. Behind, somewhere in that consuming darkness, a hunter had found its quarry. My name's Elias. For nigh on 20 years, the thrum of a diesel engine has been the rhythm of my life. I've piloted these leviathans through blizzards that turn day to dusk and heat that makes asphalt shimmer like water, seen things that curl the edges of reason. But nothing, not 1 mile of those countless journeys, braced me for that particular descent into night. A standard run, or so it began, ferrying delicate electronics from the southern ports north towards the Arctic fringe, a route worn smooth by familiarity. Forecasts whispered of an impending blizzard, a white beast clawing its way down from the pole, but I'd gambled on speed, figuring to outpace the worst of it by pushing hard till dawn. As twilight bled into genuine night, the mercury plummeted. Snowflakes, tentative at first, thickened into a blinding crystalline veil. Wipers strained against the onslaught, carving frantic arcs across the windshield. The highway, usually alive with the growl of other rigs, was utterly deserted. Everyone else, it seemed, possessed the wisdom to seek shelter. That's when the lights manifested, not approaching from a distance, but simply there, sudden and sharp in my mirrors, as if conjured from the storm itself. Just another driver racing the blizzard, I told myself, dismissing the prickle of unease. Yet the minutes stretched, measured by the rhythmic slap of the wipers, and the unease festered. The hauler behind held its distance with unnerving precision. No attempt to overtake on the brief, clear stretches, no variation in the gap separating us. Just those constant, unwavering eyes burning through the snow-choked air. A coldness wholly unrelated to the sub-zero temperatures traced its way down my spine. Road fatigue, caffeine jitters, I grasped for rational explanations, but the profound sense of wrongness tightened its grip. time to probe this shadow. On the next straight, arrow-flat expanse of ice-kissed pavement, I feathered the accelerator, letting my rig's momentum bleed away. Behind me, the lights dimmed infinitesimally as the pursuer mirrored my deceleration, maintaining that exact spectral interval. My pulse hammered against my ribs. This wasn't fatigue playing tricks. This was deliberate. "All right, Elias," I breathed, the words misting in the frigid cab. "Let's dance." I stomped on the fuel, urging the engine to a dangerous roar, pushing the tons of steel and cargo faster than prudence or the treacherous conditions allowed. The response was immediate, precise. The Phantom behind matched my surge flawlessly, its twin lumens blazing, locked onto my tail. Panic began its insidious crawl. Who drove that rig, and what infernal purpose propelled them through this blizzard? Visions flickered, hijacking a deranged game of chase. My hand instinctively sought the CB, fingers fumbling for the mic. Static spat back, harsh and empty. The storm was strangling the airwaves. I was utterly, terrifyingly alone. Snow fell with the density of collapsing stars, visibility shrinking to mere yards. The road ahead was a murky suggestion, turnoffs or sanctuaries swallowed by the whiteout. Driving blind, driving fast, hoping to outrun or outlast whatever stalked me. That was all that remained. Hours felt compressed into an eternity of tension, though the dashboard clock insisted barely 45 minutes had elapsed since the Phantom first appeared. My knuckles were bone white on the wheel, my gaze a frantic metronome between the treacherous road and the haunting glow in the mirrors. Then, abruptly, it changed. The following truck surged forward, its engine note unheard over my own straining diesel. It drew level, a hulking silhouette against the driving snow. Through the blizzard's swirling curtain, I glimpsed its form, an older model, its paint scabbed and faded to a corpse-like gray. But it was the cabin that seized my breath, freezing a scream in my throat. Empty. Utterly, impossibly vacant. The driver's seat stared back, unoccupied. I blinked, violently shaking my head, convinced exhaustion had finally fractured my sanity. A second look confirmed the impossible truth. No driver. The truck piloted itself, holding its course with terrifying perfection on the slick, unforgiving highway. Primal terror seized me, cold and absolute. This defied everything. Machines didn't drive themselves, not here, not now. Madness clawed at the edges of my perception. Before the thought could fully form, the mechanical wraith swerved, aiming directly for my cab. Instinct hurled the wheel over. Metal screamed protest as my trailer slewed violently, a terrifying pendulum swing that threatened to fold the entire rig in two. A heart-stopping skid, a desperate correction, and somehow, miraculously, I held the road. But the nature of the hunt had irrevocably shifted. This wasn't pursuit, it was assault. I pushed my engine past every limit, hurtling down the obscured highway at speeds that courted disaster. The Phantom rig shadowed me effortlessly, periodically lunging alongside, attempting to muscle me into the snow-laden void. Each time, a frantic swerve, a prayer muttered through clenched teeth, bought me another few seconds. My mind, frantic, scrabbled for an escape. A town, a patrol station, anything. But the blizzard revealed only more infinite hostile road. Rounding a wide curve, my high beams sliced through the white chaos, illuminating a structure ahead, a bridge, spanning a ravine lost in shadow. A desperate gamble sparked in my mind, reckless, but perhaps my only recourse. I eased back slightly, letting the phantom draw parallel once more. As our rigs thundered onto the bridge's icy span, I slammed the brakes and wrenched the wheel hard right. My truck protested, skidding sideways, the trailer jackknifing in a shower of sparks and tortured metal. A bone-jarring impact shuddered through the frame as the driverless truck plowed into my trailer's flank. For a sickening moment, we were fused, a single monstrous entity sliding across the bridge. Then, with a shriek of tearing steel, the phantom broke away. I watched, transfixed in my side mirror, as it veered uncontrollably, soared over the bridge railing, and plunged silently into the unseen depths below. My own rig shuddered to a halt, the cab hanging inches over the precipice. Silence descended, broken only by the wind's howl and the frantic pounding in my chest. Hands trembling uncontrollably, breath sawing in my throat, I sat frozen. Minutes passed before courage returned. Edging the door open, I peered over the railing into the snow-filled abyss. Nothing. No twisted wreckage, no disturbed snow, no trace whatsoever that anything had fallen. As if the phantom hauler had dissolved into the storm from which it came. How long I remained there, suspended between terror and disbelief, I cannot say. Eventually, numbly, I coaxed my battered rig back from the brink and continued the journey. The blizzard, its purpose seemingly fulfilled, dissipated as swiftly as it had arrived, unveiling a sky brittle with stars. When I finally rolled into anchorage half a day late, the story felt like a shard of ice lodged in my throat. Report it? A ghost truck, driven by nothing? They'd call me drunk or mad. So I held my tongue, delivered the cargo, and tried to bury the memory beneath miles and routine. But the image remains indelible. Those twin lumens burning in the mirror, the chilling vacancy behind the phantom's wheel. Sometimes when I retrace that northern route, especially when the snow begins its silent descent, I feel the old tension coil in my gut. My eyes flick constantly to the mirrors, because the lonely highways where night stretches into forever and storms are born of malice hold secrets. And sometimes, far behind me, I think I see them, two distant points of light, closing the distance just a little too eagerly. When that happens, the accelerator finds the floor, my grip tightens on the wheel, and I pray for the dawn, because I learned the truth that night. The roads are never truly empty. Not all predators are flesh and blood. So if you find yourself navigating some desolate highway in the dead of night, and lights appear behind you, clinging too close for comfort, don't be so sure it's just another traveler. It could be something else, something that hunts the frozen darkness. And if it is, drive like hell. Drive smart, but whatever you do, don't look in the cab. Some voids, once witnessed, stare back forever. The phantom is always out there, waiting on the endless highways of the night. A disquiet began its crawl across my meticulously ordered existence 3 nights past, centering on my personal ledger. That leather-bound journal, my anchor to the verifiable, remained secreted as always within the locked sanctum of my desk's uppermost drawer. A diminutive key, its existence known only to me, resides perpetually in my trouser pocket. Mine is a life charted with compulsive precision, Every meal consumed, every minute slept, every domestic task conquered finds its place within those pages. A log of calls placed, destinations reached, the minutiae of the day captured not from obsession, but from a deep-seated need for the tangible, the structured. That journal is my bulwark against chaos, the definitive chronicle of my reality. Imagine, then, the vertiginous lurch in my gut upon discovering script upon a page that my hand had never formed. It was late, the clock nudging towards 11 when I returned from a day steeped in the mundane. Spreadsheets wrestled, emails dispatched, errands navigated through city arteries. After the ritual ablutions, clad in the casual armor of sleepwear, I approached the desk for my nightly inscription. The ledger lay agape, open, not tucked away but splayed near its midpoint. The alien words leaped out, rendered in a deep cerulean ink, the handwriting a stark contrast to my own. Letters fiercely upright, compressed tightly, devoid of any slant. An unfamiliar, almost mechanical precision, unequivocally not mine. My initial thought, a trespasser, a bizarre prank, dissolved upon checking the drawer. Still locked. The key remained undisturbed in my pocket. The room bore no sign of intrusion. I leaned closer, eyes tracing the foreign text. Encountered him once more, that reflection haunting the periphery, down by the skeletal remains of the old bus terminal bar. His insistence grates, this claim of sameness, a lie. He wears my face, borrows my voice, yet the totality is discordant, alien. Am I fracturing? The date stamped above was today's, yet the time indicated was 4 p.m. An impossibility. At 4, I was immersed in quarterly reports at my office, miles from any derelict bar. A frantic drumbeat commenced in my chest. I brushed a fingertip across the ink, bone dry, no lingering scent of freshness. Heart hammering, I riffled back through preceding pages, searching for other anomalies. Nothing. My familiar script, recounting verifiable facts, filled the earlier leaves. A clammy sheen broke out on my forehead. I scrutinized each page again. Only that single paragraph pulsed with wrongness. The journal's edges were smooth, pristine. No evidence of forced entry or manipulation. With trembling hands, I closed the ledger, secured the lock, and forced measured breaths. Perhaps a momentary lapse, a fugue. The notion felt absurd. My memory is a fortress, and that script, it was the antithesis of my own flowing, right-slanted hand. This was rigid, almost inhuman. Sleep offered no refuge that night. How? The question revolved endlessly. No one possessed a key. The windows were latched. I lived in solitude. Dawn arrived, pale and uncertain. I resolved to re-examine the entry in daylight's clarity, hoping some detail had been distorted by shadow or fatigue. Unlocking the drawer, I found the ledger not nestled within, but resting atop the clutter, expectant. I flipped it open to the marked page. The text remained, immutable, but below it, fresh lines had materialized. He professes we inhabit the identical life stream, displayed his car keys, duplicates of my own. When pressed for his address, he described my apartment, detail for excruciating detail. Nausea churns within me. Ice traced a path down my spine. I knew I hadn't penned those words. The ledger hadn't been touched since I'd locked it away. The air grew colder. My mouth felt like parchment. A glance at my phone jolted me, late for work. With a surge of adrenaline, I slammed the journal shut, shoved it back into the drawer, turned the key, and fled the apartment. Throughout the day, amidst the comforting solidity of numbers and deadlines, the unease gnawed. My focus splintered, thoughts returning inexorably to that impossible script. Who was its author? What phantom encounter did it describe? Evening found me hurrying home, anticipation a knot in my stomach. Desk drawer unlocked, ledger opened. 3 new paragraphs awaited. They painted a scene of dialogue between myself and myself, an exact likeness. The text spoke of shared disorientation, of comparing driver's licenses, the shock of identical birth dates, job titles, even the brand of wristwatch. My hands began to shake uncontrollably. The handwriting persisted, that sharp, vertical script, but the narrative it spun was pure delirium. I have no twin. No such meeting occurred. Belief faltered, reality warping. I slapped the diary shut, the sound sharp in the sudden quiet. Breathing raggedly, chest constricted. The apartment felt unnaturally still, save for the metronomic tick of the grandfather clock in the hall, each beat amplifying the oppressive weight in the air. The urge to call someone, anyone, warred with crippling embarrassment. How could I articulate this madness? Friends, colleagues, they'd assume a jest or worse, a descent into delusion. An experiment formed. Action felt necessary. I carefully tore out the offending pages, the paper yielding with a soft rip. Carrying them to the kitchen, I consigned them to the bin's oblivion. Back at the desk, the ledger was locked away once more. I sank onto the sofa, pulse thundering. This would end it. Later, roused near midnight by nature's call, I passed the desk. The top drawer stood slightly ajar. I was certain I had locked it. Hesitantly, I pulled it fully open. The ledger rested on top, seemingly whole. Heart lurching into my throat, I fumbled it open, flipping to the section I'd excised. The pages were back, seamlessly integrated, perfectly bound. Cold dread washed over me. My fingertips traced the smooth paper. No sign of rupture, no glue, nothing. The entries were restored, verbatim, and beneath them, new lines had bloomed. They described my tearing out the pages. They described the trip to the trash bin. The script declared, he attempts erasure, futile. The narrative cannot be unwritten. Panic seized me. I slammed the journal, retreated to my bedroom, and bolted the door. The night passed in a state of hypervigilance, every floorboard creak a potential footstep, every shadow suspect. Sleep was impossible. By morning, a new resolve hardened. Disposal. Complete annihilation. I seized the ledger, thrust it into a nondescript paper bag, and marched outside to my car. The morning sun felt incongruously cheerful, the pavement solid beneath my feet. I drove to a deserted commercial lot behind a strip mall. From the glove box, I retrieved a small butane lighter. Stepping out into the vacant expanse, I placed the diary on the cracked asphalt and ignited it. Flames licked at the cover, curling inwards. Thin smoke plumed upwards. My eyes darted nervously, scanning for witnesses. Empty. The ledger burned, reducing itself to charred flakes and ash. I ground the remains underfoot, scattering them, a fragile sense of release washing over me. The drive home, windows down, cool air rushing in, felt like surfacing. Inside my apartment, I walked directly to the desk, needing visual confirmation of its absence. My stomach plummeted. It sat there, On the polished wood surface, upright, untouched by fire. I picked it up, fingers trembling. Flipping through, I saw every entry, every alien word perfectly preserved. My breath hitched, my throat closed. A desperate attempt at calm, counting slowly to 10, failed as my knees weakened. Then I saw it, more writing, a new chapter detailing the immolation I had just performed. He subjected me to fire, it read. Proof he senses the shift, the convergence. What follows will illuminate all. Tears pricked my eyes. I set the ledger down gently, backing away as if from a venomous thing. My muscles screamed with tension, thoughts racing, chest aching. How does one combat the impossible? Escape seemed the only recourse. Wallet, phone, keys, I grabbed them and fled, leaving the drawer unlocked this time. Hours bled away, wandering downtown, lost in the anonymity of crowds, seeking refuge in the bland chatter of cafes. The diary's presence was a phantom weight on my mind, yet confronting it again felt unbearable. Darkness fell. Reluctantly, I returned. The apartment building brooded silently. My own footsteps echoed unnervingly in the corridor. Inside, I flicked on every light, a futile ward against the encroaching dread. Windows checked, locks verified. Then the desk. The ledger lay open, beckoning. A fresh page detailed an encounter in a city I'd never visited, referencing streets unknown, times clashing with my documented movements. It spoke of dialogue with the other me, comparing diverging life paths, a shared sense of displacement. The final sentence chilled me to the bone. He cannot outrun the destination. A tremor ran through my arms. I collapsed into the desk chair, elbows finding the wood, head bowed, pulse hammering against my ribs. This notion of another self, a parallel existence bleeding into mine. It defied all logic, yet the diary insisted, its narrative weaving a terrifying plausibility. Or perhaps it was imposing that belief. Once more, I traced the page edges, smooth, unblemished. The ink looked wet, vital, yet felt utterly dry. No pen lay nearby. A frantic search of drawers behind furniture yielded nothing. I simply sat there, enveloped by the silence, back aching, neck rigid with strain. Another strategy born of desperation, distance. Deep in the night, around 2 a.m., I drove to the city's industrial fringe, found a cavernous dumpster behind a darkened warehouse, its stench thick with decay. I hurled the ledger inside, heard it clang against metal, and sped away into the drizzling gloom. The wet streets reflected the sparse lights. Back in my apartment, the sight that greeted me was expected yet profoundly shocking. The diary sat on my desk, closed, and resting neatly upon its cover, a pen I had never seen before, sleek, black, unadorned. My phone displayed 2:43 a.m. A wave of utter exhaustion washed over me. I opened the ledger, a new entry. He casts me away like refuse. It changes nothing. Soon he will witness what I have witnessed. My mouth was arid, temples throbbing. I slammed it shut, pacing the confines of my living room, the television's flickering images failing to penetrate the storm in my mind. The subsequent 2 days saw the diary swell, pages multiplying, filled with increasingly bizarre chronicles, travels to spectral locations, dialogues with phantoms, prophecies of a future I recoiled from, hints of timelines merging, of this other self encroaching, becoming palpable. Each attempt at destruction, shredding, soaking, burying, proved futile. It always returned, immaculate, its narrative augmented with a precise account of my failed efforts. My existence became a constant state of low-grade panic. My hands developed an intermittent tremor. Confiding in anyone remained unthinkable. Who would grant credence to such a tale? I began setting alarms, hoping to catch the transformation in progress, waking hourly through the night to check its pages. Always it appeared unchanged under my scrutiny, yet morning inevitably revealed fresh paragraphs, detailing experiences that were mine and yet not mine, lived by a version of myself navigating a subtly skewed reality. I felt porous, invaded. My reflection stared back from the mirror, gaunt, shadowed eyes testifying to sleepless nights and scarce meals. Yesterday, a lengthy passage appeared. It described a culminating encounter between my other self and me. Hours spent discussing the ledger itself, the genesis of its nocturnal entries, and an impending choice I would face. Refusal, the entry warned, would invite something far worse. What choice? What consequences? I remain ignorant. I only know that with every opening of the cover, more text accumulates, chronicling a life diverging from my own, pulling me towards an unknown precipice. I transcribe this account now as an anchor, a final attempt to delineate my known reality from the encroaching strangeness, my physical responses, the sweat-slick palms, the racing heart, the trembling limbs. These are my proof of self. The thought of entombing the diary in a bank vault occurs, but the conviction of its inevitable return suffocates the idea. Fire, blade, distance, all have failed. It persists. It rests there now, quiescent upon the desk, a silent sentinel guarding a future I never solicited. Fear coils tight in my chest as I gaze upon its aged cover. The impulse to flee, to abandon this apartment and never look back is potent but ultimately useless. The diary, I know, would manifest wherever I landed. No lock can hold it, no refuse bin conceal it. Its trajectory is unknown, but its presence is inexorable. Each new page feels like a step closer to an abyss I cannot comprehend and desperately wish to avoid. Shortly, I will leave, seek the anonymity of my car, the solace of simple air. The ledger will remain here, waiting. Upon my return, it may offer more words, more glimpses into that other shadowed life. I lack the means to fight it, the power to destroy it. Revealing it feels impossible. It speaks of a destiny too personal, too terrifying to share. My only fragile hope lies in continued scrutiny, searching its cryptic lines for some clue, some key to halting this insidious process. I cannot know what awaits, only that the diary will be here, watching, still, holding a future I did not choose, utterly impervious to my will. His eyes met mine in the rear-view reflection, just a fleeting glance. Yet in that instant, the fragile illusion of salvation shattered. The roadside Samaritan, the unexpected grace on a desolate highway, morphed into a chilling premonition. Deeper, we plunged into an anonymous landscape, the engine a dull drone against the frantic pulse in my ears, my singular, desperate thought. How does one escape velocity, gravity, and a locked door in the absolute heart of nowhere? The day had unspooled like endless asphalt ribbon. I was traversing the familiar artery connecting my life to my sister Clara's, a pilgrimage performed countless times. Habit had worn the scenery smooth. Blurred greens and browns streaked past the windows as I chased the dwindling daylight. Then the sharp retort, a gunshot crack against the highway's hum, followed by the sickening, inexorable drag to the right. A shredded tire, utterly predictable, utterly disastrous. With a sigh that feathered the dust motes dancing in the afternoon light, I wrestled the car onto the gravel shoulder, the stones chattering their displeasure. Stepping out, the scale of the rupture was immediate. The rear passenger tire gaped, a ruin of rubber and steel thread. The trunk lid groaned open, revealing not just the jack and lug wrench, but the second act of this farce. The spare, limp and uselessly flat. A wave of pure frustration crested within me. An hour, maybe more, still separated me from Clara's doorstep. And here I stood, immobilized, tethered to a wounded machine. My phone, clutched like a talisman, offered only the stark, mocking epitaph: no service. Just as despair began to settle like the roadside dust, a pickup truck, weathered and sturdy, decelerated, pulling onto the shoulder ahead. A man emerged, perhaps nearing 50, his face shaded by a well-loved baseball cap, a faded plaid shirt hanging loose on his frame. "Bit of trouble?" he inquired, his voice carrying easily on the still air as he ambled closer. Relief, potent and perhaps premature, washed through me. "Yes," I managed, gesturing helplessly. "Flat tire, and the spares decided to join it." He clicked his tongue, a sound of practiced sympathy. "Rotten luck. Mind if I take a peek?" I waved him towards the wreckage. "Help yourself, but I fear it's beyond roadside repair." He crouched, examined the defunct tire, then rose. "Yep, that one's done for. Look, there's a garage maybe 20 miles on. I can run you up there, sort out a tow for your car." Hesitation prickled. Every cautionary tale, every parental warning screamed against entering a stranger's vehicle. Yet the alternatives were stark. Stranded, darkness encroaching, utterly alone. That would be incredible, thank you," I offered, attempting a confidence I didn't possess. A smile touched his lips, but it didn't quite ignite his eyes. "Glad to help. Grab your essentials, let's get moving." I hastily collected my phone, wallet, and a small tote bag, whispering a silent, fervent plea that this leap of faith wouldn't land me in ruin, as I climbed into the passenger seat. The initial miles passed in a semblance of normalcy. He introduced himself as Silas, inquired about my destination. I sketched the details vaguely, guarding personal specifics. Yet an unsettling dissonance began to hum beneath the surface. The terrain felt alien, the turns unfamiliar. Shouldn't a town, a sign of civilization, be appearing? Only unbroken walls of dense woodland flanked the asphalt. "Are you certain this is the route to the garage?" I ventured, striving for nonchalance. Silas's knuckles whitened slightly on the steering wheel. "Oh, sure, just a bit further. Roads change out here, you know." I offered a non-committal nod, but my heart had begun a frantic, unsteady rhythm against my ribs. A surreptitious glance at my phone confirmed the digital void. Still no signal. It was then, glancing towards the rear view, that I intercepted his gaze. The easygoing facade had evaporated, leaving behind something glacial, appraising. A profound chill traced my spine, the cold certainty of my predicament crystallizing. Thought needed to be swift, precise. Ejecting myself from the speeding truck was suicide. The velocity prohibitive, the landing unforgiving, the wilderness absolute. I required leverage, a reason to stop, a way to shatter this controlled isolation. "You know," I began, forcing an airy tone that felt brittle. "I'm quite sure I left my medication back in my car. It's rather important. Could we possibly just swing back quickly?" Silas's jaw tightened, a muscle twitching near his temple. "Can't do that. Nearly there now." "Please," I pressed, the manufactured lightness fraying. "It will only take a moment. I really must have—" I said no, he cut in, the veneer of helpfulness disintegrating completely. "You're not going anywhere." Raw fear threatened to engulf me, but I wrestled it back. Panic was a luxury I couldn't afford. Calm observation, an opportunistic eye. That was the currency now. Rounding a curve, a flicker of light pierced the gloom. A gas station, small, slightly dilapidated, yet undeniably operational. Civilization fragile, but present. "Oh, look," I exclaimed, pointing with manufactured enthusiasm. "Perhaps they could assist with the tire. Why don't we pull in there?" Silas's grip on the wheel was bone white. "Place is shut down, been closed for years." But even as he spoke, the evidence contradicted him. Lights glowed warmly within. A lone car sat parked near the pumps. He was lying. We both knew it. In that sliver of realization, a decision formed. Reckless, but necessary. My only gambit. As the truck drew parallel with the station's entrance, I lunged, wrenching the steering wheel hard to the right. The vehicle bucked violently. Silas cursed, grappling for control as we careened across the tarmac, tires screaming in protest. For one heart-stopping moment, the world tilted, threatening to invert. Then, a jarring spin, ending abruptly as the truck slammed into a low concrete barrier in the station's parking lot. The impact stole my breath, but adrenaline surged, overriding the shock. My fingers, clumsy with tremor, fumbled at the seatbelt buckle. Silas slumped against the wheel, momentarily stunned but stirring. Finally, the clasp released. I shoved the door open and half fell, half tumbled onto the cracked pavement, legs threatening to buckle. Shouts erupted nearby. Someone from the station, alerted by the commotion, was emerging. "Help!" I shrieked, stumbling towards the figure. "Please, you have to help me." Behind me, a door slammed. Silas, recovered, was pursuing. But before he could close the distance, two men materialized, placing themselves resolutely between us. "Hey, what the hell is going on?" one demanded, his voice firm. The story tumbled out, disjointed and breathless. The flat tire, the offered ride, the dawning, terrifying realization. Silas attempted to interrupt, weaving a narrative of confusion, perhaps intoxication, but the men's expressions remained skeptical. One guided me gently towards the station's entrance while the other maintained a watchful stance near Silas. Inside, the attendant's voice calling the police became a distant hum as the adrenaline subsided, leaving me awash in tremors. I collapsed into a plastic chair, shaking uncontrollably. It was finished. I was safe. Yet the chilling awareness of what might have transpired, the abyss I had skirted, was only just beginning to seep in. Flashing blue and red lights soon painted the scene as police cruisers arrived. They separated us efficiently, taking initial statements. I watched, detached, as they placed Silas, whose actual name, I would learn, was Victor Croft, in handcuffs and guided him into the back of a patrol car. An officer approached me, his expression serious. "Ma'am, we'll need you to come to the station. We have some further questions." I nodded mutely, drained beyond resistance. At the station, the full, horrifying context emerged. Victor Croft, a name linked to several disappearances along this very stretch of highway. Authorities had been hunting him for months, a phantom always dissolving before they could grasp him, until this moment, until me. As I recounted the events, dredging up every detail, a sickening unease coiled in my stomach. How many others had accepted his deceptive offer? How many hadn't possessed the desperate luck or reckless impulse that led to my escape? The officers commended my quick thinking, the bravery of forcing the crash. But bravery felt distant, stupidity felt closer, for trusting a stranger, for silencing the insistent whisper of instinct. Hours later, Clara arrived, her face etched with worry, tears spilling as she enveloped me in a fierce hug. "I was frantic," she choked out. "When you never arrived, wouldn't answer your phone." I clung to her, the dam finally breaking, the accumulated terror and stress of the day erupting in ragged, wrenching sobs. The subsequent weeks were a disorienting montage of interviews, victim support counselors, and the sudden glare of media attention as the story unfolded. Victor Croft's capture cracked open 3 cold cases, offering agonizing closure to families suspended in years of unknowing. For me, the echoes lingered. Sleep offered little respite, haunted by fractured nightmares. Sudden noises made me flinch. Entering a car became a calculated act of will shadowed by anxiety. Yet slowly, painstakingly, aided by time and therapy, healing began. I learned to heed the quiet voice of intuition, to prioritize safety over ingrained politeness. My ordeal, horrific as it was, eventually forged a new purpose, advocating for highway safety, for the awareness of those who vanish without a trace. Now, years removed, when I travel that same highway, the landscape is no longer solely defined by fear. It holds, instead, a stark reminder of resilience, of the split-second decision that rewrote my ending and brought a predator to justice. The memory of that day remains vivid, a chilling testament to how swiftly normalcy can curdle. But it doesn't govern me. It serves as a constant, quiet reminder. Be vigilant, trust your gut, never assume safety is a given. For sometimes the most dangerous monsters wear familiar faces, offering a ride, a kind word, and a smile that never quite reaches their eyes. A thumb stark against the bruised canvas of the Nevada twilight punctuated the desolate highway. Just one figure etched in silhouette by the sinking sun. Countless others I'd flown past on this transcontinental pilgrimage, ghosts thumbing rides I refused to grant. But this one snagged something in me. Perhaps the relentless drone of the engine had frayed my judgment, or maybe some dormant, ill-advised compassion stirred. Whatever phantom impulse guided my foot to the brake, I coasted onto the shoulder, oblivious to the darkness I was beckoning into the sanctuary of my car. Elias, that's me. 35 orbits around the sun, most spent debugging the digital arteries of San Francisco. This cross-country odyssey, a self-prescribed cure. Witness America unfurl, flush the residue of a fractured relationship. Arrive cleansed for my sister's New York nuptials. Until this Nevada dusk, the miles had spooled by with benign monotony. The window hummed down. He leaned in, late 20s maybe, a tangle of umber hair framing eyes of startling cerulean intensity. A smile, quick and seemingly grateful, flashed across his face. "Appreciate the stop," his voice rasped, tinged with an inflection I couldn't quite pin down. "Name's Silas. Bag okay in the back?" A nod from me, the click of the locks. As Silas folded himself into the passenger seat, a faint, coppery tang, iron maybe, pricked the air. Road dust, I told myself, dismissing the anomaly. Engine catching, tires biting asphalt again. "Destination?" I queried, merging back into the flow. "East," Silas answered, gaze locked on the vanishing point. "Chicago, if the road takes me." Kilometers dissolved into easy banter. Silas possessed a certain raconteur's charm. Spinning tales of a nomadic existence lived thumb first across the states. Yet beneath the surface narrative, inconsistencies snagged like burrs. Details blurred, chronologies warped. The sun bled away entirely, leaving the desert a realm of amorphous shadows, and a disquiet began to coil in my gut. Silas's easy manner tightened. His answers grew clipped, evasive. Peripheral glances, sharp and assessing, flickered towards me when he thought I wasn't looking. An hour shy of the next map dot, the fuel gauge nudged empty. I veered towards the sickly fluorescent halo of a lone service station. "I can handle the pump," Silas offered as I killed the engine. "You look like you need the facilities." A flicker of reluctance. Leaving him with the car felt wrong, but biology overruled caution. Inside the restroom, rank with bleach and neglect, I splashed cold water onto my face, attempting to sluice away the rising tide of paranoia. Then, drifting from behind the cashier's counter, the tinny voice of a small television broadcasting the news. Nationwide alert for Silas Vane, sought for questioning regarding multiple homicides spanning 3 states. Description: Caucasian male, late 20s, brown hair, blue eyes, considered armed, exercise extreme caution. Ice flooded my veins. The description mirrored the man beside me with chilling precision. My fingers, trembling, fumbled for my phone, the emergency number hovering on the screen. As my hand reached for the door handle, it swung inward. Silas filled the frame, the affable mask gone, replaced by something glacial and appraising. "Wouldn't recommend that, Elias," he murmured, his gaze flicking to the phone, clutched in my white-knuckled grip. "Time for a detour, don't you think?" A subtle gesture towards the car. In the dim light spilling from the station, I saw it. The cold gleam of steel nestled in his palm. My thoughts fractured, scrambling for an escape vector, any vector, but every scenario ended in crimson blossoms on the sand. Each step back towards the car was leaden, the weight of Silas's presence a physical pressure behind me. Back on the asphalt ribbon, his voice, low and calm, directed me onto an unlit artery bleeding into the desert's black heart. Pavement surrendered to rutted earth, the headlamps carving a futile tunnel through impenetrable sagebrush and gloom. "You know, Elias," Silas remarked, his tone bizarrely conversational, a chilling echo of our earlier rapport. I genuinely found our discussion diverting. It's rare finding someone who thinks. My knuckles whitened on the wheel. I fought to keep the tremor from my voice. "What is it you want, Silas? Assuming that is your name." A low chuckle vibrated from his chest, raising the hairs on my neck. "Oh, the name's mine, all right. What I want. That's multifaceted. Let's start with transport and perhaps a measure of empathy." An eternity crawled by under a blanket of strained silence, punctuated only by the crunch of gravel beneath the tires. We plunged deeper into the arid void. My brain, a frantic engine, cycled through doomed stratagems: wreck the car, lunge for the knife, feign illness. Each path terminated in the same tableau, my life draining into the thirsty earth. Then his command, "Stop here." We idled in a natural amphitheater, walled by sentinel rock formations sculpted by wind and time. An ideal sepulcher, my mind registered with grim clarity. "Engine off," Silas instructed, his voice dropping to a lethal hush. Silence descended, absolute save for the frantic percussion of my own pulse in my ears. He turned, the blade in his hand catching a stray moonbeam. "You strike me as perceptive, Elias, so a proposition. Choice the first. You become my chauffeur. Destination undisclosed. Compliance absolute. Your reward, continued respiration. Choice the second." He let the implication hang in the charged air. My throat felt like sandpaper, and if I comply, when we arrive, what guarantee do I have? A chilling curve touched Silas's lips. "None whatsoever. Isn't that the thrill?" There, bathed in the indifferent moonlight, staring into the eyes of my possible executioner, something fractured within me. The accumulated sediment of a love turned sour, the gray drone of coding existence, the stark, howling lunacy of this predicament. It erupted. Laughter clawed its way up my throat, raw and untamed, startling Silas, momentarily disrupting his predatory calm. "You know, Silas," I sputtered, gulping air between bursts of near hysteria. This is monumentally absurd, utterly preposterous. I'm en route to watch my sister say, 'I do,' and instead, I'm auditioning for the role of victim in a desert snuff film. Offered a Sophie's choice between definite and likely termination. It's cosmic B-movie horror. For a beat, bewilderment flickered across Silas's features, displacing the icy control. "What in God's name are you rambling about?" The laughter wouldn't cease. The sheer ridiculousness of it all, Silas. The cosmic joke. One day chasing semicolons, the next co-starring with a psychopath. So, fine, yes, I'll drive. What difference does it make now? Live, die, at least it breaks the monotony. Silas simply stared for a protracted moment, the knife hanging forgotten in his grasp. Then the impossible happened. He began to laugh. Not the chilling amusement from before, but a full-throated, convulsive sound that shook his frame. "Well, damn," he managed, swiping at his eyes. "Decades of this, and nobody's ever pulled that." As the echoes of our shared, unhinged mirth faded into the desert quiet, an uncanny detente settled between us. Fear remained my co-pilot, the lethal potential beside me an undeniable fact, yet the atmospheric pressure had undeniably changed. "All right, Elias," Silas said, his voice losing some of its razor edge. "A pact. You get me to Chicago. No heroics, no sudden detours to the nearest precinct. I, in turn, guarantee your safe passage upon arrival." As an earnest, he unlatched his door and, with a flick of his wrist, sent the knife arcing into the Stygian gloom beyond the headlights. My life in your hands, yours in mine. A precarious equilibrium. Agreed. Insanity. Pure, unadulterated insanity. Every rational neuron screamed, run, alert, escape. Yet a starved corner of my soul, long asphyxiated by the predictable rhythm of my existence, compelled a single quiet nod. Deal. What followed were the most surreal days I'd ever navigated. Silas and I traversed the American expanse, our conversations meandering through trivialities and profundities alike. He sketched fragments of his past, a bleak narrative of compounding misfortunes that had supposedly carved his trajectory. I offered anecdotes from my own life, its very banality apparently holding a strange allure for him. An incongruous duo, the coder and the killer, forging an unsettling connection across mile markers and state lines. Beneath it all, however, thrummed a constant high-voltage wire of tension, the implicit understanding that this fragile truce could shatter instantaneously. Chicago materialized, a sprawling concrete delta. Silas guided me to an anonymous brick edifice on a forgettable street. Gathering his meager belongings, he paused, fixing me with an inscrutable look. "You're an odd bird, Elias," he stated matter-of-factly. "Thanks for the lift, and for the courtesy." With that, he melted into the urban throng, swallowed by the city's indifferent currents. I remained parked for an unmeasured duration, the engine ticking cool, my mind struggling to assimilate the preceding days. One facet screamed for civic duty, for sirens and statements. Another, deeper, quieter facet knew the call would never be made. Pointing the car westward towards the familiar embrace of the Pacific, I commenced the long return. Something fundamental had shifted within me. The world felt simultaneously vaster, riddled with unseen perils, yet vibrantly, terrifyingly alive. Silas vanished from my world as abruptly as he'd entered. His ultimate fate remains an unsettling blank. Yet that transcontinental passage, in the shadow of death, irrevocably altered my internal landscape. Life's capricious nature, humanity's tangled depths, the bizarre genesis of profound experience, lessons learned under duress. Do I rue the decision to stop on that desolate highway? Occasionally, yes, when the phantom chill of the knife resurfaces in the small hours. Mostly, though, a strange gratitude persists. It was an awakening, a violent jolt from the slumber of routine. It exposed dimensions of existence and of myself, previously unimagined. Now, when a solitary thumb pleads from the roadside, my foot remains firmly on the accelerator. But sometimes a wry smile touches my lips, a silent acknowledgement of the most improbable journey and the dark companion who redefined the edge.